Good morning, friends. Today I shall give a small talk on John Milton and his epic Paradise Lost. You know that John Milton was born on 1608 and he lived up to 1674. He lived in a very traumatic period as far as politics and history of England is concerned. And he was not only a poet, he was a pamphleteer, social activist, and a Puritan, and whatnot. It was all rolled in one. So he actually participated in the bloody revolution of 1600, in which the King Charles I was beheaded, and which brought the rule of protectorate England, that of Oliver Cromwell. You know that Milton had his schooling games, St. Paul's School, yesterday. He had a Christian and humanistic education from 1615 to 1625. In 1625, still as a young man, you guess, at the age of 17, he came to a college, that is a Christ College, Cambridge. Perhaps I think he is the youngest student in that college in those days. He was, so to say, he had a charm of a beautiful woman. That was the reason many of his classmates cajoled him, that is the lady of the Christ College. But by the time he did a lot of reading and he began writing the verses. And one thing you find in him is the spirit of music in him. That's it. That's all his spirit of music only which enabled him to write poetry in the early age. That was on the word on the death of a pet dog. And that was his first elegy. And he reached to the high level of writing great elegy like Lycidas. In between he wrote some poems in Latin and in English also on the morning of Nativity of Christ, Comus, and two poems, companion poems you can say, La Allegro and La Il Penseroso. And he graduated himself in his writing poetry. He became more and more confident, and he has been preparing to write on the Christian themes and a Christian epic, a kind of course, he may not have foreseen that he would write a great epic and he would become a great poet. But it was there in him, all the way he has been preparing to write it on a great scale. You know that Paradise Lost has 12 books, and each book has more than 1500 lines. To you, no wonder I reveal that as a college student, in the BA first year, I completely read Paradise Lost from first page to the last page. That was my most favorite epic in my college days. And so to say, he graduated himself to the writing of an epic. And here, first thing you should keep it in mind that it is the first, first completely written epic, religious epic in the history of English language. Moreover, it had the biblical theme of the fall of man. So, for that two reasons, it became a great epic in the history of English literature. I wonder how he could find so much time. By that time he became blind and he recited a major portion of poem to his daughters to scribe. He almost became blind by reading and writing. He was born great and he embraced the great theme and he wrote a great epic Paradise Lost, because that he later supplemented it in writing Paradise Regained also. Like all other epics, it starts, it begins in the in medias res, we say, in the middle of the story, where first we see the Satan's, like our politician's speech, highly rhetorical speech, enticing all his archangels, the army of archangels, to rebel against God. Finally, he determines himself to take revenge. But in what way? So, to put it in simple words, he flies out of the hell and becomes a cormorant, and moving, he goes to the place of specific, the Eden, the part of paradise. Paradise is not Eden. Eden is not paradise. Eden is a garden of where Adam and Eve lived. The pure divine creatures, in the human shapes, divine creatures in human shapes, having no human instincts and all that. The pure creatures created by God. And God took pride in creating Adam and Eve. But when he sees, Satan sees sitting on the tallest tree, he guesses, he knows that he cannot take revenge against God directly. So that was the reason he wants to demolish the world created by God. At least make them fall from grace, divine grace. So then he looks at them, watches from a distance like an eagle, a cormorant. Then they are wandering and they rest under a tree, the tree of knowledge, the fruit of knowledge. There is one condition, that they should not eat the fruit of the knowledge. That is order passed by God. The limit, because earlier he was in the heaven as in the name of Lucifer. So he becomes a serpent and entwined due to the tree and reaches downward to her, to Eve sitting there, and whispers in her ear the temptation of eating the fruit of knowledge, hunger, at the lowest branch. So suddenly she asks Adam to pick it up. So Adam picks that fruit and hands over that. She eats the knowledge, fruit of knowledge. Suddenly she loses her divinity and she becomes human. He runs away because he develops all her human instincts like fear and anger and desire, all those things, and shame. She goes and runs behind the bush, and it is a shock to Adam what happened to her, and he goes in search of her. They find that she is weeping, is sobbing. She made a mistake. It's a sin, primordial sin of disobeying the God. So he couldn't help the eating the other half of the fruit as she is born of him. That is what it is said, in flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. The other half of the fruit, and he also loses his divinity and the creatures, and later this news goes to God, and God is very angry, and he sends Michael with a sword, commanding them to drive out of Eden. So they comes and they're driven out of the paradise, and they come down to earth, and they beget children, and children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. The whole humanity is the paradise of Adam and Eve. This is how Bible explains the origin of human species on the earth. So you see in this poem, there is a revenge. The first one you find, in the last books you read, the quarrel between the God and Satan in heaven. Yes, Satan. Earlier he was in the form of Lucifer. He was one of the angels in the heaven. He questioned the authority, and God punishes him from hurling down to the hell for 7 days and 7 nights. He falls into the bottomless pit, and there he becomes Satan. There are the other characters like Sin, the mother of death. So this is a whole poem. It impressed me like that. It's of very first line. He starts of man's first disobedience. Of man's first disobedience, and his task is to explain the ways of God to man. So Milton, this epic, and there is epic descriptions are there, epic similes are there, and now it starts in the in medias res, but books to follow explain you backwards. It takes you. So first the fight between the God and archangel Lucifer, and then Lucifer is hurled down to the hell. There he becomes Satan, and after he becomes frustrated, he rebels against God and wants to take revenge, and he goes to and takes a cormorant, and there this is how the whole book is written. Paradise Lost is written in 12 books, and it's in a sublime style, epic style. Thank you.